Hi everyone! Today we're going to talk about one of the main components of our power system.
The generator.
My name is Sasha.
And my name is Scott. We travel full-time in our NuCamp Cirrus 920 truck camper. Normally when we need to start the generator, I come out and take care of it. It's usually much easier for me to start than it is for Sasha. But when Sasha comes out to start it, she has a slightly different way of doing it.
Usually it's pretty easy to start, you just have to pull a few times. A few more? Maybe more?
Most of the time we use our generator in the camper. We run it off of propane and it's wired right into our electrical system. I took advantage of the existing factory prep package, I guess. It came with the propane line. It also had 10 gauge Romex run from the generator compartment all the way up to the transfer switch. We skipped the generator option on this because we wanted to have our own generator that we could take out and use however we wanted. And at least for the first, say, 8 months that we were on the road, we never really took the generator out. We always ran it in this compartment. Ever since we've gotten our new batteries, we've been able to use those for 3 to 4 days and then they need to be recharged. But because they're so large, at 600 amp hours, we usually bring them down to about 100 amp hours, which means we need to put 500 amp hours back into them, which is about 10 hours of running the generator. That 10 hours would eat up both of our tanks of propane. So we've decided that we started to take it out and set it up on the front rack and run the generator on gas. It's much more efficient and it conserves our propane. Hi again. So we've been boondocking for a few days and our batteries are starting to run low. Normally we run the generator on propane because it's super easy and it doesn't smell very bad. However, considering I have to run the generator for about 12 hours to recharge the battery, I'm going to run it off of gas. And I'm going to take it out of the camper, put it on the front, and that way we don't have to listen to it for the day. So we charge our batteries at about 55 amps. That's just under 1,000 watts. So that's about half load for the generator, and I think I'm getting about 5 hours of runtime. We have 2.5 gallons of gas with us, and that gives us about 2 recharges. So that's a pretty economical way of recharging the batteries. However, I'm really looking forward to getting the alternator set up. That'll give us 80 amps of charging, and it'll run right off the truck. I'm going to pull the generator out and get it set up on the front, and I'll show you how I do that. I already had the power and the propane lines disconnected from the generator because I've been using it like this for a while. But for the first 10 months that we were on the road, we would run the generator whenever we needed more power than we could provide with the batteries. We don't like having to refill the tanks very often. Switching over to gas has really helped us out with that, but it's a lot more work to get set up, and I generally only want to do that if I'm going to run it for the day. So I have the generator set on our front hitch rack, whatever you want to call it. And the nice thing is it helps quiet the vibration, it keeps it off the ground, and it keeps the generator far away from us. And when we're inside working, we hear it a little bit, but it's still very quiet. And luckily right here, our main power cord does reach. So I'm gonna go get the power cord, get that plugged in, and then I'll fill it up with gas and we'll fire it up. Whenever I plug the camper into the generator, I have to use one of these 30 amp to 15 amp adapters. They just plug into here, and then it plugs in normally. Now, whenever we're at a campground, we do use a surge protector or a power filter, however you want to call that, to prevent spikes in voltage. Also, those devices detect wiring problems with the pedestal, and they're very, very important. I keep reading about people having all of their electronics fried because they plugged into the wrong type of pedestal or there was a brownout or something along those lines. In this case, I'm not going to use that because this generator provides extremely clean power. I've never heard of anyone having a problem with it. The only thing I am going to do is Because this goes in sideways like that, because of the adapter, it has a tendency to vibrate and fall down. So I've been using this little tiny bungee cord. I just hook it onto the rim here, and I just clip it here. And that actually keeps it pretty neutral, and it's run like this for like 12 hours at a time. I'm gonna start the generator. Right now, eco throttle is on. I want that off to start it. And another consideration is generally you want to leave your loads unplugged until the generator's warmed up for at least 30 seconds or so. I'm gonna plug it in right now just for my own convenience, and I do have the breaker inside off, so the load is disconnected until I go inside and actually turn it on. I'm pretty sure the generator holds about 1 gallon. I think 1.1 gallons. And something I've forgotten a couple times is this is a vent that turns off and on, and you turn it off when you're traveling so nothing spills out. However, when you're running the generator, you need the fuel level to drop, which means it's going to pull in air. So you have to open the vent, or else after about 45 minutes to an hour of running, the generator will just shut down. This is how I'd normally run it on propane, but I'm going to go right up to gasoline. Make sure that my eco throttle is off. I'm going to turn the choke on just a little bit. And it usually starts in 1 or 2 pulls. We'll see. Look at that, 1 pull. Gotta love a Honda. So I usually let it warm up for, I don't know, 30 seconds or so, because then I still have to go inside the camper to turn the load on. But before I do, I'm gonna turn it to eco. That'll idle it down. It only runs as much as it needs to and saves you some fuel. So the next thing I'll do is turn the breaker on. Since we already showed you the generator running on gas at the last boondock site, I wanted to go over how we run it on propane while it's in the camper. I spent a couple months looking at all of the different generator options. There was several other dual fuel, propane and gas options available that I really considered buying. But after all of the research, I realized that the Honda was really the best generator, and eventually when I go to sell it, it's going to have the best resale value. Because we're so dependent on the generator, at least for now, I wanted to make sure that I had the most reliable generator that I could find, even if that meant spending a little bit more to get it. We ended up going with a Honda 2200i. Since I knew the generator's warranty was going to be voided as soon as I installed the propane kit, I opted to find a used generator, and what I ended up finding was a brand new generator at a pawn shop. Someone had turned it in, they guaranteed that it wasn't stolen, and it was only $800, which saved me about $250 or $300. It doesn't come with a warranty, obviously, but it was brand new in the box. So I was able to get the generator and install the propane kit myself and not have to worry about the warranty. One of the biggest struggles I had was finding a way to cool the generator in the compartment, since the Honda generator isn't designed to run in an enclosed area. After quite a bit of thinking and pulling the entire compartment apart, I decided that I was going to use an automotive style fan to exhaust the air out through this vent, which I found on Amazon. I was going to remove a factory installed plate for the air intake. So the generator fits in here very easily, and it's a little bit high, but that's why I bring this ladder out here. This is a standard 10-inch radiator fan that I got from, I think, like AutoZone. And I use these bungee cords to attach it to the louvers. All of the parts that I can think of, I'll put in the description below. And I really didn't know how to attach this fan to this and limit the rattling and vibration while it ran. These bungee cords have actually really worked out well. Because they're not in the sun, they haven't dry rotted, and they minimize all of the vibration and hold it right in place. Underneath here, there was an aluminum plate that I guess they used to block off the factory generator installation. I removed that plate, which I then reused later. I installed the standard household furnace vent. Not really sure what you call it. It's regular steel, so it's starting to rust, but it's been working for me. And I did have to cut an opening to allow the exhaust pipe through. This is a flexible silicone hose that I got, I think, on eBay or Amazon. This flexible silicone hose runs down to this piece of electrical conduit, and it's attached with 2 hose clamps. So far, it's been airtight. We don't have any fumes coming out through there. I used some standoffs and mounted it to the body of the camper, and then I have the exhaust pipe coming out here. In here, you can see this stainless steel plate. It was just something I had kicking around. It serves the purpose of getting the generator up off the ground. The air inlet is down here. So the air comes in, because of this 3-inch platform, the air has the opportunity to go either that way or that way, which splits it up and gives the front of the generator fresh air to pull in and blow through the cooling system and then exhaust out here. I mentioned earlier that I reused that aluminum plate that was blocking off the hole down here. And what I used it for was simply a heat shield. Because of the exhaust sitting right here and all of the exhaust air coming out, it was heating this galvanized steel wall up more than I was comfortable with. So I screwed this on and added some spacers into the back to give it an air gap. And so far it's been working really well. I use these strings, which have these cam locks, to secure the generator while we're driving. When we're gonna run it, I loosen them up a little bit to give a little bit of room to move. Once the strings are loose, I'll tilt the entire generator kind of like this, which helps force the hot exhaust air into this corner. I've noticed that by doing that, it's really helped keep the temperatures inside this compartment down. I've been able to run this without it overheating or any problems up to about 95 degrees outside. Anything hotter than that and it starts to get a little too warm in there. I welded a steel air fitting onto this so that I could attach these brass pipe fittings of some type. And I found this kicking around in some old parts I had. It is a high temperature brass quick disconnect for a airline. I think it's a 3/4 inch. So this allows me to quickly disconnect the exhaust and pull the generator out of the compartment. The factory propane line came in through here and was terminated with a plug. I simply unplugged it and reconnected it up to this assembly. This is a demand regulator that came with the Hutch Mountain propane conversion kit. And I had to come up with a way to install this and mount it so that it was out of the way, wasn't interfering with anything, easy to access, and wouldn't prevent me from putting the generator in the compartment. Took quite a while to figure out how to get it in there, but this has been working out pretty well. The reason you need to keep this accessible is because before you start it, you want to push this center button. It's like priming the propane system. It will start without doing that, but it takes forever. So normally the generator just sits in here, we loosen up these strings. So all I have to do to start it is there's a main shutoff valve over here. I'm not sure if you can see it. We're gonna turn that on. I'm gonna set this to LP mode, which keeps the gas off. There's no gas in this right now anyway. They give you this decal to put on so that you have a better understanding of where to set everything. So we turn the propane on. We're gonna turn this to LP mode. I guess it'll run off of natural gas as well. And then we're going to use this button up here to prime it for a second or so. Just like that. Whenever we're running on propane, I don't need to use the choke. I just give it a little bit more of this, and it should fire right up. So So it's warmed up, the inverter's starting to charge the batteries, and I'm gonna go switch it over to eco mode and it'll idle down. So now it's only gonna run as fast as it needs to keep the load running. Now I can close the cabinet. We're about 15 feet away from it. It's pretty quiet, and I think the noisiest part of it is actually the cooling fan. I'm gonna bring you inside and show you what it sounds like while it's running like this. I'm not sure how well this is gonna show up on the camera or if you're gonna be able to hear it. But there is a drone and a rattle to it while it's running inside the compartment. We've spent many hours letting this run like this, and it's been all right. But when we have to run the generator for the day, it's really nice to be able to take the generator out and get it away from our living space. So when I shut it off, if I'm just gonna shut it off for a second, I'll just turn it to engine off right here. However, when I'm gonna shut it off for the day and I'm completely done using it, to make sure that I always turn the propane off, I come up here and I shut the main propane valve. Since we're always trying to conserve our propane, I like to make sure that I always have that completely off so I don't end up forgetting it for a week or two and then running out of propane. So now the process of getting it out of the camper is relatively easy. It's a little bit cumbersome, but we love having the option to take it out and move it where we need it. I normally need to let it cool down a little bit before I can touch anything because that gets extremely hot. In fact, let's pause it and let it cool down.
Hi, my finger is bleeding, so I had this paper thingy, so I'm just gonna keep it for now.
In the interest of time, I'm gonna use some napkins that we got from McDonald's to insulate my fingers. So I usually just lift up and then I can pull this down. That disconnects the exhaust and I usually just let it rest there. We don't ever drive without the generator in here, so I don't really need to come up with a way to secure this. Next, I'll go ahead and disconnect the propane. And then I put these nice little caps on. That helps keep all the dust and dirt out. I'll unhook my straps. Pass them through this handle. And then I pull them around front so I don't lose them. The generator's almost out. This junction box had some 10 gauge Romex run to it. I then took a 20 amp extension cord that I had laying around from an old computer. I just used some wire nuts to connect it up inside of there. It runs around into this conduit and then exits, and I just plug it in like a normal plug. All of this runs back to the transfer switch near the main electrical panel. So these Honda generators come with an 8.3 amp battery charging system that puts out 12 volts. I was able to take a couple blade style connectors and kind of make a plug that goes in here. I think this fan pulls 5 or 6 amps. The label has come off of it, but it's been running really well. So this comes out, and that's that. I bought the official plug that's supposed to go in there. It also has battery charging cables, if I were to ever need that. My plan is to replace this homemade setup with this plug so it doesn't ever come out. So the next step is to just pull the generator out. Like that. And then I'm gonna go throw it on the front rack. After the last few weeks of using this frequently, we found this is the best place to put it. It keeps it off the ground and out of the mud. Our main power cord will reach from the side of the camper all the way over to here. And having it up here helps insulate the vibration from the rest of the camper. When we're running it in here for the day, we barely hear it. How much do we hear it? Not much. It's pretty quiet.
Yeah.
I've already showed you how we use this boondocking in the previous clips. If you guys have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comments and I'd be happy to answer them. So that's pretty much it for our generator setup. We've used it in both configurations. We love how it works both ways. We have found that it does consume a lot of propane, and when we're trying to be conservative with it, we'd rather run it on gas. I've really tried to avoid running this on gas while in that compartment because it's very difficult to refill. I'd have to remove it and put it back in to refill it with gas. However, when it's on propane, I can just start it and stop it at will. If you guys have any questions on the specifics on how I built this, please let me know in the comments and I'd be happy to answer. So now we're going to put it back together and get back to the campground. Putting it back into the compartment isn't really my favorite thing to do, but I've gotten used to it. So this is where the importance of the propane regulator placement comes into play. I needed to have it out of the way enough so that I could get this in there and slide it through. And it fits perfectly. And now I'm just going to put everything back together in the reverse order. So over time this has gotten a little bit dry, but I can't really put any lubrication on it because then it gets really smoky. So I just have to wiggle it and play with it until it closes. And last but not least, I'll re-secure it using our hooks. And then the last consideration is just, I have to get the string on the back side of this propane inlet. Then I just cinch them down. It does tend to slide around just a little bit, but it stayed in place for the last 20,000 miles or so. It's been pretty good. I will say I don't like my system for holding it in place, but it's actually been working really well, so I guess there's no sense in reinventing the wheel. So we close it up, lock it, and we go on our merry way.
So if you haven't already subscribed, please consider doing so.
And don't forget to click the little bell icon so that you get notified when we post new videos.